Señores docentes, alumnos, participantes, público en general, tengan un maravilloso día, disfrutemos cada momento. Y qué mejor que nos encontremos en reunión con motivo del 4º Congreso Internacional de Tendencias en Innovación Educativa, Citie 2022. Permítanme mencionar un pensamiento de George Bernard Shaw. La imaginación es el principio de la creación. Imaginas lo que deseas, persigues lo que imaginas y finalmente creas lo que persigues. Es por ello que tenemos un extraordinario tema: How to support creative process in a STEM classroom. Definitivamente nos sentimos motivados por aprender para identificar nuevas oportunidades de crecimiento. Esta presentación explora cómo la creatividad y el pensamiento crítico funcionan en paralelo en varias fases del proceso de invención y cómo ciertas competencias sociales y emocionales apoyan la confianza creativa de los estudiantes y construyen una cultura creativa en el aula. Además de las habilidades de pensamiento crítico y creativo, se necesitan habilidades de pensamiento computacional. Ejemplos de ello tenemos la descomposición, ¿no? El proceso de dividir una tarea en partes más pequeñas que sean más manejables. Patrones, crear reglas, tendencias y resolver problemas más generales. Abstracción, simplificar las cosas. Algoritmo, un conjunto de reglas para hacer algo. Depuración, detección o evaluación sistemática de errores. Es un honor dirigirme a quien cabe la responsabilidad de esta ponencia, quien es el doctor Jari Lavonen, quien nos presentará un ejemplo práctico de un proyecto de invención y se analizará el aprendizaje de los alumnos. Él es profesor de educación en física y química en la Universidad de Helsinki, Finlandia. Es director del Foro Nacional de Formación Docente. Es profesor invitado en la Universidad Johannesburgo. Ha estado investigando la educación en ciencia y tecnología y la formación del profesorado durante los últimos 31 años. Sus principales intereses son la enseñanza y el aprendizaje de la ciencia y la tecnología, el desarrollo curricular, la formación del profesorado y el uso de las TIC en la educación. Ha publicado un total de 170 artículos científicos arbitrados en revistas y libros, otros 140 artículos y 160 libros para la formación de profesores de ciencias o para la enseñanza de las ciencias. Ha estado activo en lo que es consultoría internacional, por ejemplo, involucrando la renovación de la formación docente en Noruega, Perú y Sudáfrica. Recibamos con un vigoroso aplauso a nuestro doctor, el señor Jari Lavonen.
Okay, I can share my slides now. Is it correct?
Okay, now is a presentation in English, please.
Yeah, my presentation is in English, so I hope that. And can you see my slides now?
Yes.
See, okay. Is there any translation available, or I should just speak slowly in English? I hope. Okay. So just a minute. Okay, I will start now. I hope you can see my slides and hear my voice. So buenos dias, it's my great pleasure to introduce the way how in Finland we have emphasized during the last 10 years creative processes in our STEM classrooms. I will shortly introduce the background, what kind of education policy discussion we have had. And then I will focus to the creative, critical, and computational thinking in STEM classrooms. Then I give an example of a creative process in our classrooms and give also some research outcomes in the field. And finally, the discussion. During the last 20 years all over the world, it has been a heavy discussion that what kind of competencies we should emphasize in education, what kind of competencies young people need to learn in education. And international organizations like OECD, UNESCO, European Union have published many models what are important to emphasize in education. And for example, OECD, when they published the PIAC study, they emphasized that in 2018 that many jobs are highly automated and 14% of the jobs will not exist in near future. And 30% of the jobs will change dramatically. And half of the current jobs will not exist in 25 years is emphasized by the Oxford University researchers. And there will be new jobs we don't even know. So even now in my country, many of the activities are made not by human beings, but artificial intelligence. For example, in our greenhouses, the organizing the cultivation of plants is totally supported by the automation. When we go to the supermarket, we are paying ourselves with the cash machines, and when we are making the bank services and shopping, we are just using our mobile phones. In Finland and many other countries, even the news in newspapers are made by machines, not by human beings. And so this is the reason that because the working life is so radically changing that what we should emphasize in education and the question that are our young people ready for labor market. We have been following those European Union and OECD recommendations, and one interesting model what is very much influencing to our discussions while we have been planning the new curriculum and also teacher education strategies is the OECD Learning Compass. The OECD Learning Compass emphasizes that there are three types of competencies. They are separate, but typically when we engage in activities, we need all them. The first area of competencies are so-called know what and know how type of competencies. So young people should learn the deep meaning for concepts and processes, and they should learn inquiry, design, solutions, and problem-solving skills. So this is the first area of competencies we should emphasize according to the OECD. The second area is cognitive and metacognitive skills, creative and critical thinking skills, computational thinking skills, and also the use of metacognition or learning to learn competencies. And the third area is social emotional skills, kind of empathy to other people, trust to ourselves, self-efficacy, responsibility, and collaboration. So these are the three main areas of skills or competencies we should learn in order to behave in a clever way. They are separate, but for example, when we engage in designing, we need all those. So this will be the main message of my presentation, that these three areas of competencies are very important in the design and inquiry. So I will first talk a little bit about cognitive and metacognitive skills, especially how these skills are needed in inquiry and designing. In this OECD Learning Compass documents, it's emphasizing that we need creative thinking and critical thinking while we are inquiring while we are designing. In inquiring, when we are designing the study or inquiry, it's a lot of creativity is needed. And afterwards, when we come to the outcomes, we have to have creativity while we make connections to the concepts or ideas we already know in the field of inquiry and also in the other fields. So creativity is needed in inquiry, but also critical thinking is needed in inquiry. When we are identifying questions based on the earlier research and we are connecting the claim and evidence, again, we need critical thinking. And it's the same in designing. When we generate and play with unusual and radical ideas, we need creative thinking. And when we are taking into account several views related to the problem or design, we need critical thinking. Also, the evaluation of ideas is something where we need critical thinking. So this was the introduction to the topic. So I would like to repeat that world has changed and is changing, and we should very carefully think what we should emphasize in education, in STEM classes in my case now, and take into account those recommendations coming from the OECD Union and researchers. And now I will give some main definitions. I will repeat in my presentation many times. So what we mean with creative thinking? So the definition is quite often given by telling that the outcome, what is coming out while we are employing creative thinking, is somehow novel. We don't know it beforehand. And it is also appropriate or useful for the purposes the outcome is designed. For example, Steenberg is emphasizing this view. However, it depends the way of thinking and the outcome of the culture and the context and the history and the habits where it is created. So it is not exactly the same, for example, in my country or in your country. Another way to make a definition to creative thinking is to describe somehow what type is the creative thinking. So example, the Durham Commission on Creative and Education described that the creative is seen in the capacity to imagine, think, express, or make something that is not before. The area creative thinking research, it's an old area. However, and it is important in for example, engineering. However, even it is done research in creativity. In the context of school education, there is not so much research on this topic. So there is actually lack of research in the context of school education. I will later use this kind of symbols, and this type of symbols mean students are making creative thinking and generating ideas, for example. So you will see this symbol several times in my presentation. Critical thinking. So Edward Glaser definition of critical thinking in his book. So he make a definition that critical thinking is the analysis of available facts, evidence, observation, and arguments for making a judgment. So what is behind a judgment? That's critical thinking. And these are examples of the critical thinking. We are clarifying thinking. We are investigating sources of information or resources. We are identifying arguments. We are analyzing sources. We are evaluating arguments or ideas. We are creating, synthesizing our own arguments. So these are examples of the situations we are employing creative thinking. And I will use this symbol in the situation when students are looking for background information in the field of the topic they are later on creative. And I use this symbol when the students are evaluating the ideas. So this was about creative thinking and critical thinking. And the third thinking mode is computational thinking. And Citie is one of the researchers have a lot of references related to the describing what kind of thinking is computational thinking. So one type of computational thinking is the decomposition. You have a problem and you are dividing the original problem to the sub-problems. You are splitting it down for more manageable sub-problems. In the computer science, when we are making computer program, we are using this thinking that we are splitting the original big program to the small, more manageable programs. Pattern recognition, somehow in the data or phenomena, we are looking for pattern, how something is developing. For example, this is a series of pictures and you can see that how the color of the circles are changing, so there is a pattern. Simplifying or abstraction, so more complex phenomena is made to the more simple one in order to see the core of the phenomena or object. Algorithmic type of thinking, algorithm is describing the steps we are making. And then parallelism means that we are making a couple of issues at the same time. And efficiency means that we are aiming to find a solution that is the most effective, to find a solution in the more effective way with small number of steps. Automation means that we are making some simple thing to be done by the, for example, robot. And then finally, the debugging means that we are checking the algorithm, how it is working, or we are checking how the robot is doing its work. So debugging, evaluating the process. So this type of thinking, in addition to creative thinking, critical thinking, are needed in classroom invention projects. I will give very simple examples of this computational thinking because they are not so commonly known in science education or STEM education. Here in the northern part of Europe, in Finland, Norway, Sweden, we have a big project where we are focusing to the computational thinking in STEM classrooms. And we have made a literature review, and we have designed new type of activities. So example of the decomposition. So for example, making a breakfast. That is the big problem, how to make a breakfast. We are splitting it down that we need a toast and we need tea. And we are even splitting it more simple cases that we need a slice of bread and toast the bread and put butter and maybe jam. And make a tea means that we have to boil the water and put the tea to the water and maybe milk or honey. So this is the making the big problem to more manageable, smaller problems or tasks. This is an example of the simplifying things. So the metro network, which is under the ground, it's very simple. So human beings are aiming to make it simple in order to easier perceive what is the metro roads in different places. And this is an example of the algorithm. So when we are making a cake, we are following the algorithm which is described in the cookbook. So put the oven warming and take some materials and make a mixing and so on. And you can describe with the algorithm this whole cake making process. So this was definitions. So what we mean with creative, critical, and computational thinking. And these three types of thinking are needed in invention process. And now I will introduce the invention process, and afterwards I give an example of the process. And I will start from the history. So these two guys, they meet and start to discuss. The other one is actually quite angry. Where have you been? He's asking. I have been generating alternatives. Alternatives? What do you mean? I do not have time for that. I have a lot of work to be done. So he's not questioning how he's doing. He has used time for finding solutions. So this is the point. We should always ask, could we make this in a different way, in a better way, in order to have this kind of innovation. This circle or is an invention, and you are combining it with the courage, you get an innovation. So nowadays we use in our classroom this kind of Arduinos, and it's an invention, and we are combining it with the other lab tools and equipments, and we get innovations. In a similar way than in my first example, the one man is using this wheel and putting it to the carriage, and there is an innovation coming out. This type of innovations, they are created through creative processes. And in a creative process, people who are active in generating ideas and coming to the solutions, they are combining ideas and facts they already know in order to create something new. So quite often is the idea is to put together the topics you already know. Let's put things together. So when I was in China, I made a picture, so how people were putting the brush and karisu together and making a cleaning machine. In Finland during the summertime, I have to cut my grass, so I have put together with the bicycle and cutting machine. And sometimes I think that the fruit salads in the morning, they looks quite ugly, and why we can not have it in a more attractive way. So it looks simple that people are putting things together, coming to the invention. But it is actually challenging for human being. It's very challenging for us, for me, maybe for you also, to change our thinking mode from the very critical approach to the more creative approach. And this means that we should ask that how to build up the atmosphere which is supportive for creative thinking. So the question is that how to go out of the box. That is quite often asked. So why it is challenging? So some basic research in the field of creative processes is describing this phenomena in a way that so we are here with our ideas, and our challenge is here. So between our ideas and the challenge, there is a control. It is controlling our thinking. And it is very challenging even to see the challenge. What is my challenge now? What should I overcome? So the recognizing of the challenge is challenging because there is the control that is preventing our thinking. Somehow, if we are making holes to the control, we can recognize the challenge. And we can combine ideas that are somehow related to the challenge, putting things together in a new way, and then solving the problem. So that recognizing the challenge is challenging because there is a control that is preventing us to recognize it, and combining ideas and solving the problem, it is also challenging because the control is preventing our creative process. So how to make this control smaller? How to make it down? There are many methods that are used, and for example, in our classrooms, we are using so-called personal analogies. That is one. So we are asking students, okay, you have a challenge you are not able to overcome. Think about if you are an inventor, how you overcome the challenge. Or if you are an artist, how you then overcome the challenge. Or a lion, what should lion do? Or the magic man. Somehow using this kind of personal analogy, going out from our control way of thinking, that helps you to find solutions. Of course, there are many other role-playing, storytelling. Yes, please. Is there something? Yes.
Ahora bien, hay dos maneras de utilizar el tema de Big Data.
So I'm not able to understand Spanish, sorry. Should I continue? I will continue. So many ways how to change the control type of control in our mind, and this ice breaking and storytelling are ways how to make the control small. So before I go to my example, I asked that what kind of skills or competencies are needed in invention process. And I have a kind of claim that actually this OECD model I show you, it is quite appropriate to analyze what skills and competencies are needed in invention process and what kind of skills and competencies could be learned in invention process in our STEM classrooms. So let's come back to this picture. I give you first two slides. From the real situation, from the adult life. So sometimes it's challenging to make a transition from the adult life to the school, but let's try. So this is from the office. People are brainstorming in the office, and this lady, who is a kind of leading person in this brainstorming session, she says that we are brainstorming here and there is no dump ideas. So this is telling something about the process. So there are no dump ideas. So the ideas are ideas. They are not good, they are not bad, they are just ideas. And the challenge is to generate many ideas and then evaluate them, put them together and come to the novel solution. This is another example. I'm happy to have almost 100 ideas. Now it's time to evaluate the ideas. So let's have a look for these two pictures. There is actually a lot of messages to us. What are the competencies and skills needed in invention projects? And let's use this OECD model. So what are the know what, know how type of competencies? Because of course, we have to know the scientific and technological knowledge. It's important to learn that kind of issues. And we have recognized in our research project that it's actually quite challenging to learn those core ideas in science and core ideas in technology. Somehow you have to combine traditional teaching and these projects, electric circuit and how sensors are working. So that kind of introductions are needed as a part of the creative processes. And also the know how inquiry, design or invention skills, problem solving skills, they are needed. We are needing those creative and critical thinking skills in order to generate and evaluate ideas. And we need those computational thinking skills. I will give more examples of that. And of course, learning to learn skills. And what was very much emphasized in these two pictures, actually, there are those socio-emotional skills. So the positive attitude, empathy, confidence that we find ideas, communication skills and constructive attitude to the communication. We are not blaming each other. We are asking constructive questions. Do you mean that? To sum up what you think, we need collaboration skills. We should trust each other, and we think that I have to contribute to the process. So that kind of competencies are, on the other hand, you are learning while you are engaging in invention projects, but also they are the competencies what you need. So you are learning and using them in invention project. So what is the invention process? It starts from the question or challenge. We are aiming to do something in a different way. Recognizing the challenge is actually quite difficult, so we should first accept that it is somehow not so well defined challenge. It's include holes. We are saying it's holes. Then we are making research on the topic of the challenge. We are generating ideas. We are evaluating ideas. We are making a prototype, innovation. First accepting and then making the prototype and testing the prototype. So these type of phases are in Finnish classrooms while we are guiding students to be more creative, to make an invention process in the classroom. But of course, this is not only person or only group who has outlined the design or invention process. For example, design thinking is very close to that. So in the design thinking, we know that it's not non-linear, it's iterative and that kind of. There are phases like emphasize and define, ideate, prototyping and testing. So very similar, but this is how we understand in our research the invention process. Some of the phases are more creative, some are more critical. So recognizing, okay, that's quite neutral. But when we are making research on the field of the challenge, that is critical thinking we are doing. When we are generating ideas related to the challenge, then we are creative. When we are evaluating the ideas, we are critical. Accepting the ideas, maybe neutral. Designing a prototype, again creative, and testing the prototype, critical. So this invention process, there are phases. Some of them are emphasizing more creative thinking. Some of them are emphasizing more critical thinking. It's important that the teacher who is scaffolding the process, he or she understand that while you are making research, maybe not so much creative is present, and when you are generating ideas, it's very creative, and you are not evaluating the ideas. You are just generating the ideas and by creative thinking. Creative thinking. Okay, that is the process. So let's see in my example how this process is done in the classroom. And I will give an example of the student project related to the smart home. So my example is about the context of smart home, and we are following so-called project-based learning. I will introduce after the example what I mean with the project-based learning, but I just tell now that it's project-based learning. And the driving question which is driving the students' activities is that how to build a house or model, not the whole house, but the small-scale house, which behave according to the sustainable development ideas. So this is the challenge students are solving. And of course, first they have to recognize the challenge. If I'm saying to students that let's make a smart home, they said, what do you mean? So they have to understand what is the smart home, what is smart in the smart home. And they make an inquiry. They go around, for example, a school building. There is a lot of smart even in the school building, or maybe a house somewhere else. So they are looking around and making pictures with the mobile phones and inquiring the environment. So this is the first phase of the invention process. They are investigating after they recognizing the challenge, of course. And from the point of view of computational thinking, they are making an abstraction. They are simplifying the issue. They are looking for things around and simplifying what makes smart house smart. And then they come to the classrooms. They have the pictures. They are classifying the pictures. It's kind of inquiry process. You are classifying and you are looking for patterns. What kind of issues similar to each other makes the pattern in the smart house. And of course, teacher is needed for scaffolding the learning process. It's still the inquiry phase. They are making investigation about the smart house, and school building is an example of that. And actually what they are doing from the point of view of computational thinking, they are splitting down the big question, what are the characteristics of the smart house, to the small pieces. Then they look more information about the characteristics of the smart house from the internet. So this inquiry phase continues. They are not starting to build up the smart house. They are not starting to generate ideas in the beginning. They are making inquiry. They are looking for patterns and they are making abstraction of the smart house. What is important in this kind of invention pedagogy is the communication. So the students are communicating the outcomes. For example, here they are communicating what they find out from the smart house. What are the characteristics? Communication. And then they start generate ideas. What are smart characteristics in our small-scale house? And in our process, we are guiding students to use different kind of techniques which are supportive for creativity. And this 8x8 method means that you put a challenge in the middle, and then you use this kind of other papers around the challenge, and you figure out, okay, the process of the smart house, what are the inputs, what are the outputs in the process, what kind of voices and lights I am using, and so on. So you are generating ideas after the inquiry phase. There are many ways how we can support students' idea generation, and this kind of yellow or red labs is most common, easy way to write ideas to the papers, afterwards classify them and evaluate them. In the case, okay, this my example is about smart house, but in the case we are guiding students to build up a robot or that kind of things, then we are using also this 8x8 method. So the characteristics of the robot is in the middle, and then we guide students to think about the processes, input, output, and voices and lights. And so this approach could be used in many cases. And after generating the ideas, the groups are communicating the ideas to other groups, so they can learn from each other. It's not only the teacher is telling issues, but students are communicating to each other. What did they generate? What kind of ideas they will have in the smart house they are creating. Then they come to the evaluation phase. They are evaluating the ideas. Maybe they are a little bit practicing how the idea is working, and then they accept in the small group what is the final decision. So this kind of debugging from the computational thinking point of view. After this evaluation, they are starting to build up the prototype. They are putting the Arduino in order to have these smart characteristics in the smart house, building the prototype and testing the prototype. There is algorithms while you are making program to the Arduino, and this is guiding the working of the smart house and also this debugging. And finally, the students are introducing the outcome and giving feedback to each other, and so sharing communication and evaluation of the smart house. So this was an example how this invention process was transformed to the classroom and guide students' learning activities. So this whole process takes several lesson hours. It's not only one lesson hour, it is more than 1 week they are working, not every lesson, but a couple of lessons per day they are doing this project. And then we call this kind of working as project-based learning. It is very much guided by the curriculum aims, and it is also guided by the driving question. In the beginning, I introduced the driving question, that what is smart in the smart house. So that was guiding the students' activity. Then the students learn or participate in authentic situated inquiry or design process. It could be also in inquiry learning or design learning as here, in order to make sense of the phenomena in inquiry or design solution in design, in line with the driving questions. And while students are working around the challenge, they are very active in scientific and engineering practices. They are doing something similar that engineering are doing. They are planning, they are constructing, they are prototyping, they are testing. They focus to the core ideas. There are those electric circuits are there there are sensors and that kind of how they work. They are in collaboration. They are active in constructing not only the smart house, but they are learning new knowledge and skills. And they are creating an artifact, which is very concrete outcome of the process. Teacher is scaffolding there. You can see in my example how teacher was scaffolding the learning processes and supporting through formative assessment the student learning. And there was an outcome. This project-based learning is an old idea. John Dewey 100 years ago was introducing it. But nowadays it's very much based on the learning science research outcomes. For example, these two books, How People Learn and How People Learn #2, they describe that how we can support learning. And the project-based learning is kind of concrete answer, how we can support learning. So now I have introduced the process, the invention process in the classroom. And we have made a lot of different type of research in order to understand what students are doing and what they are learning in this kind of invention process. And one way is to use this kind of network analysis. So this is describing the phases of the process, starting from the questioning and collection of the data and planning. And this gray are students, and this blue is the phase of the task they are doing, and the red one is teacher. So we can see, and these kind of networks, they are created based on the video recordings. So from the video you can see what different students are doing and with whom they are doing. And then you can build up this kind of network, and you can see how the network is changing in different phases. You can see that when the teacher is supporting students, in which phases more and in which phases less. And you can see how the different students are collaborating. So this helps us to understand the process, the learning process, while they are making inventions. And it's quite often we are using this kind of quantitative data analysis, and we are also using the interviews. So this is an example from the student teachers interviewing students, how they were making progress in the invention process. Teachers asking that, why did you have difficulties in today? And because everyone was talking over each other, we were not listening, and why you talk, and this kind of teacher supportive reflective thinking. And there is a publication where these outcomes of this research have been published. And a couple of findings. So the main finding is that the teacher-guided reflective discussions are important. It's not, we are not able just to guide students and ask them to make invention. There is a lot of issues the teacher have to do. He's scaffolding the processes, he's scaffolding this kind of reflective thinking sessions, and those reflective thinking discussions can help teacher to recognize the pairs the pupils are doing, where they need more support. And this research I was shortly introduced here, it clarifies that reflective discussions can be seen as a model for students on how to act in a group. They are learning this metacognitive skills, learning to learn skills. Our further steps, we are just now starting a new project where we are very much focusing to the creative and critical thinking in the context of robotics and coding. and also looking for computational thinking. So what kind of thinking students are employing different phases of the invention process. And then we also, of course, they are examples of transversal competencies. We are looking for collaboration skills and other. And in practice, we are guiding students to design digital artifacts like Lego robots through project-based learning in order to learn what they are doing and how they learn the learning process. So this was my example and the final discussions. So what we have learned from our research focusing to the invention processes. So we are aiming to engage students in learning of knowledge and practices through project-based learning. And what is then happening? Students are very active in building knowledge and skills. And we put students' ideas and practices in the center. They are following the practices that are similar to science and engineering. They are following the science and engineering practices. There is a lot of social interaction. For example, this network analysis I showed you, it explains us how the social interaction and collaboration happens in different phases of this invention processes, invention pedagogy. And they are constructing something concrete. They are making a small-scale house, or they are making the Lego robot. They are making the code. Contextualizing is happening through the driving question, and teacher is scaffolding the processes. So this is from the learning research point of view. And then we have iterate. We have done a lot of work. What is the good process for students to learn these invention issues? So this is our model now. So they are meeting the challenge. They are making investigation related to the challenge. They are generating ideas, evaluating them, accepting, making the prototype and testing the prototype. And some of the phases are more critical thinking oriented phases, and some of them are more creative thinking oriented phases. And finally, what kind of competencies they learn and what kind of competencies, on the other hand, they need. So they need those basic competencies, scientific and technological knowledge. They need inquiry, design, and invention skills. They need creative and critical thinking skills and computational thinking skills, and this use of metacognition. And a lot of socio-emotional skills, positive attitude, empathy, confidence that we find ideas, and so on. And this week, our new book is coming out. So the Routledge is publishing the invention pedagogy, the Finnish approach to the maker education. So in this book, we have summarized our experiences related to the invention activities in classrooms and what is about invention pedagogy. Thank you for following my presentation. And if there is time for questions, I'm happy to answer or comments.
Yeah, thank you very much, Professor Lavonen. Now we'll move on to the questions. If anyone in the audience wants to ask something, please raise your hand or you can put them in the chat. I think we have some questions in the chat, Mr. Lavonen. The first question is, can we extend this model to other areas like health or biology than just engineering?
Of course, you can apply this approach in many school subjects, in sciences, biology, and also in the, for example, when students in Finland are planning they activities during the breaks or how to make school lunch environment better, or how to avoid the kind of waste and be more active in circulation of the materials. And especially in climate education, it's important that students are active in planning the solutions, how to save energy, how to save raw materials. In biology, the biodiversity, how to support the biodiversity, and there are many topics you can apply these ideas, not only in robotics and coding or technology, but in many subjects you can do it.
Okay, thank you. The next question we have is, there is always a problem that we have when it comes to brainstorming. We believe that our ideas are silly and that someone will be mocked, but in reality, all our ideas are acceptable. This is why there are countries that can develop faster than others. We are failing at this step. We can continue if there are no ideas. So how can we change that?
And unfortunately, this is the same in Finland, and a lot of emphasis would be put to this issue that teachers should support the student understanding that when we are generating ideas, there are no silly ideas, there are ideas. And our aim is to generate a lot of ideas, combining them, finding kind of novel solutions. And we emphasize that something that looks not so easy to implement to the real life, that might be the good kind of step for making a little bit more concrete idea. So that is something that we should emphasize a lot, that there is no silly ideas, there are ideas, and we can combine them, we can make progress, we can make a next step. So that is one of those socio-emotional skills. We are constructing, we are combining, we trust that we find solutions, even there is some phases that we are not so quick coming to the solution. Yes, that's very important issue. Thank you for this.
Okay, thank you. I don't know if we have any questions in the physical audience. Aquí en la audiencia presencial, ¿hay alguna pregunta? Si tienen alguna pregunta, pueden levantar la mano. Okay, so we have one last question. Which are the challenges that a student can have to acquire social and emotional abilities and critical thinking?
So what are the
challenges that the
challenges?
students can confront?
So in the first OECD models, so-called DESECO model for future competencies, they did not emphasize those socio-emotional skills at all, but now in the new models they are emphasizing. So this has been difficult for adults to recognize that those skills are really important in this kind of environment. So it is challenging in general. We have to focus them, and we have to have this kind of. I give an example how the teacher was having this discussion with the students after the lesson, kind of reflective, supporting the students' reflective discussions. Of course, the teacher should raise. So how supportive you were today to each other? How well you were able to follow this creative process, and how well you were able to differentiate the generating of ideas and evaluating of ideas. So teachers should emphasize these issues while he or she is giving the instructions, but also when he or she is guiding students to reflective thinking discussions, he should raise those topics. That's the way I was giving this paper where we published this outcomes of the reflective discussions and what we learn about them. Yes, they are not happening without any emphasis. Teachers should emphasize them. And of course, those symbols I was using, we have in the classroom those symbols, and when the students are in the very beginning, when they are doing the creative process, a teacher can have one paper where are those symbols, and he or she can asking what you are doing now. Oh, so okay, we are generating idea. Okay, you are now creative. So we can use them as a kind of support materials for helping students to recognize what they are doing. And when they recognize, they are also easily learning them.
Okay, thank you very much. Again, as we don't have any questions, we thank Dr. Lavonen for his presentation. Please everyone give a round of applause. Como no tenemos ninguna pregunta, agradecemos al profesor Jari Lavonen por su presentación. Por favor, todos fuertes aplausos.
Thank you for this possibility, and I hope you have a nice day. We have an evening, but you are having the whole day for learning new things. Have a nice day.
Thank you. Muy bien, ahora continuaremos con una siguiente presentación. Por favor, no vayan a salir del auditorio. Muchas gracias.